everybody. This is Carol Muleta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Welcome to another episode of the Parenting 411 podcast. Today, we're going to take a look at eggshell parenting. You may have already heard of this, but if not, don't worry, because I'm going to explain what it is. Now, before we get started, I want you to take out a sheet of paper like this. As you can see, it's smooth and perfect. And then what I want you to do is crumple it in your fist. Squeeze it tight and feel the resistance as it collapses under pressure. Now, open your hand and carefully smooth it out again. Here. I'm pressing out each crease so we can flatten every fold. Now, it looks a little better, right? But it will never be the same. The impressions have been made. The creases won't completely disappear. The paper is your child's developing mind. For generations, we've been quoting the party line, "Children are resilient. They'll bounce back. They'll forget." This fiction comforts us. It allows us to dismiss the impact of our emotional outbursts, our emotional storms, and our unpredictable moods, and our disproportionate reactions to our children's behavior. But the human brain doesn't work that way. Those moments of walking on eggshells around a volatile parent don't simply evaporate. They become encoded into the neural pathways that shape how we move through the world for decades to come. I watched it happen once at a cafe. There was a mother and her daughter, and they were sitting there sharing croissants and sweet treats, laughing together over some inside joke. And the girl, maybe 8, she radiated so much joy in her mother's presence, soaking up her attention. And then her mother's phone chimed. And 3 seconds was all it took. Mom's face hardened as she picked up the phone and listened. Her voice sharpened to a blade. Then she said, "Stop reaching across the table like that. What's wrong with you?" What was the transgression? Well, her daughter had just reached for a napkin. But what haunts me still wasn't the mother's reaction, because listen, we all have our moments. It was the child's response. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't hurt. Instead, with the practiced expertise of a bomb diffuser, she made herself smaller. She hunched her shoulders, she cast her eyes down, and her breathing became really shallow, and she just became still. That child had mastered the art of disappearing while remaining physically present. That's a survival skill she shouldn't have needed to know. This is the result of eggshell parenting. It's not the headline-grabbing abuse that prompts calls to child protective services, but the everyday emotional unpredictability that teaches children one devastating lesson: that their job is to manage their parents' emotions and not express their own. Now, some people will say, I'm making a big deal out of just one incident here. I could already hear the defensive responses forming in your mind. I turned out fine. Parents aren't perfect. Kids need to learn that the world isn't always going to be kind. But I'm not saying that parents should strive to be perfect at all costs on all days. Nor am I saying that there won't be occasional bad days. I'm talking about the neurological reality of what happens to developing brains in environments of chronic emotional uncertainty. The science is unequivocal and it's devastating. Children from emotionally unpredictable homes show heightened amygdala reactivity. Their threat detection systems are perpetually activated. Their prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional regulation, shows altered development patterns. Even their stress hormone production follows different rhythms. These aren't temporary accommodations they're making, they're foundational alterations in how the brain organizes itself. The very architecture of your child's brain can be changed by these traumatic experiences. And the consequences follow these children like shadows into adulthood. Now, I'm not trying to be alarmist, but my work with parents in classes and in private coaching really does bear this out. And then let me share some examples, but I want to avoid betraying confidences, so I'm going to change some of the details. So first we have Lonnie. And she was 34 years old. She was successful by conventional standards. She had a law degree. She was on the partnership track, had a beautiful home. But her relationships, well, she told me, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then she went on to say, I scan everyone's faces for signs that they're getting annoyed with me, and I apologize constantly. This is the ghost of eggshell parenting. Lonnie was raised by a mother whose approval was as unpredictable as a slot machine. Sometimes she was warm and effusive, and other times she could be cold and critical, with no discernible pattern to predict which version of her mother would appear on any given day. And next we have James. Now, he says he entered therapy when he was 42 years old because, in his words, I feel nothing. He was a successful engineer, outwardly confident, but he was emotionally numb. As a child, he had become invested in keeping the peace in a home with emotionally dysfunctional parents. He just plowed forward, acting like nothing was wrong and determined to be excellent in whatever he did. That intergenerational nature of this pattern should terrify us. Eggshell parenting environments don't just wound individuals. They replicate across generations with frightening reliability. I spoke with Kelly. She's a mother of two, and here's how she described an incident with her 5-year-old daughter. She had spilled her juice at dinner, not really a big deal, but she says, I found myself exploding. Can't you be more careful? Why are you always making a mess? And then she says she saw her daughter's face, and there was an absolute look of terror. And she said it was like seeing myself as a child.
Want to bring your child's heroes home in a big way? I just love Fathead's reusable wall decals. Imagine two-time WNBA champ Aja Wilson or superstar Caitlin Clark right on your child's wall. Talk about inspiration. My son picked NBA legend Dwayne Wade, and his room became full of excitement and motivation. Fathead decals are easy to use, easy to move, and larger than life. Click the link below to find your child's favorite athlete or entertainer at Fathead today.
So consider this. Adults who grew up in eggshell environments are significantly more likely to experience anxiety disorders, with rates to 2 to 3 times higher than the general population. Depression that proves resistant to standard treatments also results. Relationship difficulties, particularly struggles around trust and vulnerability and conflict. Many of these people have chronic health problems, as the sustained stress of being hypervigilant all the time takes its toll. Substance abuse, often beginning as self-medication for overwhelming emotional states. This isn't about minor discomfort or temporary distress. We're talking about how emotional environments literally shape human development at the cellular level. And yet we continue to tell ourselves children will simply get over it. Listen, they don't get over it. They adapt to it. They organize their entire emotional framework around it. They carry it into every relationship, every workplace, and every parenting decision that they make. Now, I'm not sharing this to paralyze parents with guilt or to suggest that any emotional expression around children is harmful. Because listen, perfect emotional consistency isn't the goal. It's not possible, and it's not even desirable. Children need to see healthy expressions of the full range of human emotions. And even more importantly, they need to witness repair after rupture, restoration after destruction, and an apology after a mistake. Creating a healthy emotional environment doesn't require perfection. It requires awareness, the willingness to repair, and the commitment to being better when you know better. So here's what it could look like in practice. You develop emotional regulation skills. Make genuine apologies after emotional outbursts or missteps. Normalize emotions while setting boundaries around behavior behind those emotions. Seeking support for unresolved childhood wounds. That's a gift you can give yourself and your children. And creating a family climate where emotional honesty is valued. Imagine a generation raised without eggshells underfoot. A generation who knows their emotions are valid and who can express their needs clearly. So I'll wrap up with one more example. So we had Martha. She described her childhood to me as emotional whiplash. Through therapy and conscious relationship choices, she began rewiring those patterns in her brain. She said, I can feel my emotions in my body now, something I couldn't do before. I can sit with discomfort instead of immediately trying to fix everyone's feelings. During her time in my parenting class, we developed practices that incorporated these new patterns of being and relating into her interactions with her children. Now, while we can't erase the creases of childhood, we can stop adding new ones. We can smooth what can be smoothed, and then we can create art from what remains, transforming the wounded places into sources of wisdom and compassion. And most importantly, we can ensure that the next generation of papers stay smooth, unmarked by the unnecessary creases of emotional unpredictability. I want to thank you for joining me today, and hopefully I've said something that will encourage and inspire you in your relationships with your children and other family members. Be sure to like and share this episode. And above all, remember to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss anything. I can't wait to talk to you again. In the meantime, remember, it's never too late to be the parent you want to be.
We bring you this episode for the purpose of information and entertainment only. It is not the intent or purpose of the Parenting 411 podcast or Carol Muleta to provide an exhaustive reference or guide on all aspects of parenting, childcare, and family life. You are strongly encouraged to read all available information, consult medical or other appropriate professionals, and pursue all reasonable means to learn as much as possible about parenting to complement what you gain here, and then tailor the information to meet your individual needs. Yes, parenting is a serious matter, though it is not an exact science. The context and insights offered in this and every episode represent an account of knowledge and personal experiences of the host and any featured guests for the viewers' and listeners' information and consideration. The host and guests do not guarantee to our viewers or listeners any specific parenting outcomes from this episode or taking actions described here.